All views and opinions expressed in this podcast may lead to learning. All information provided is for educational and developmental purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for a growth mindset. Before taking action, please consult your motivation.
This is the Teacher Talking Time Podcast.
Welcome to the Teacher Talking Time Podcast for Learners, The Cult of Learning, episode number 9. To those of you who are new to our series, the aim of this podcast is to encourage learners, language learners in general, to find and pursue what they're passionate about when learning a foreign language. The Cult of Learning series are episodes for learners of language. And in these episodes, we discuss tools and strategies for learning and provide opportunities for effective listening practice. I am Leo, and today I am joined once again by my two buddies, Mike and Andrew, and we're going to be talking about words that influenced the year of 2020. Perhaps we should call this episode Words of an Unprecedented Year. We will talk about that's right. We will talk about some of our favorite words this year and how you can actually actively learn new words in English. Important announcement. So before we get the ball rolling, we have a very few important reminders for those of you. If you are listening to our podcast, please don't forget to subscribe to it in your favorite podcast player. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to learn more about the work that we do and the courses that we offer, don't forget to visit our website, www.learnyorenglish.net, and subscribe to our mailing list for promotions, for our newsletter, and many other freebies that we offer. If you are a language learner and you're tired of learning in a classroom, then you should join our School of Learning. You only pay once, $5, cheaper than, what kind of coffee is cheaper than $5? Let's say
anything but Starbucks.
Anything but Starbucks, right? And you will get
a gas stop
access.
coffee.
There you go. You will get unlimited. And when I say unlimited, it means for the rest of your life or for as long as you live. You have access to our School of Learning. And if you like the work that we do with the School of Learning, then you should also consider our quick fixes, which are more specific and include things like how to extend a conversation in English, mastering the IELTS speaking exam, and boosting your IELTS scores with patterns. Quick fixes are only $10, probably cheap than a McDonald's Happy Meal, and we guarantee that you will definitely notice improvements in your language. We're going to start our episode today with words. We haven't talked about vocabulary in this podcast today, but boys, quick question to both of you, but I'm going to start with this. Did you know that this year is the first time ever the Oxford Dictionary didn't name a word of the year?
What?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What happened in Oxford?
I have a quote here by Oxford. They describe 2020 as a year which cannot be neatly accommodated in one single word. What do you think about that, Mike?
I think that the people at Oxford need to relax a little bit and stop being such academics. No. I think it's true, Leo, because this year has just been wild for many people, right? We went from celebrating the start of a new year as we do every year, and then we had the international pandemic, and then we had different people experiencing that pandemic differently. And now we have this supposed vaccine that's going to make our lives different in the year coming. So just like a real roller coaster of a year might be a good way of describing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Word of the year is an interesting concept because I was looking into it, and dictionaries put out their words of the year, and it seems like they do it by the most searched word through their digital or online dictionary. So looking at, Leo, what you said here. So Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com, the word pandemic is both their word of the year because it was the most searched word on their database, which is interesting.
Just so you know, the use of the word pandemic has increased by more than 57,000% this year.
Right.
Wow. I wonder about the word unprecedented too.
I have the stats here.
Oh, of course you do.
The last time they used the word pandemic was during the Spanish pandemic back in the day in the 20s. And I wonder if
Right.
we had actually dictionaries back in the day to
Mhm.
check the frequency of a word. But what's important is instead of a single word, today we will talk about our personal end of year review, of course, sharing our favorite words of the year. And we'll also talk a little bit about how we learned and remember these words. The truth of the matter is, languages evolve. But this year, I'd say it is fair to say that the rate of the evolution of words has definitely increased exponentially. What do you have to say about this, Andrew?
Um, the rate of what is exponentially? What does that
what?
mean? Holy cow! Threw me off with that one.
Well, because we're basically using a lot of new words. This is why I think the word unprecedented has become one of the key words for 2020.
Yeah, I think unprecedented is an example of a word that a lot of people, myself included, don't quite use accurately or haven't before to mean, of course, something that has never happened before. And 2020 is a year for 99% of the people on Earth. You know, there are some people who were alive during the Spanish flu, which is amazing to see. But most people have not lived through something like a pandemic. So unprecedented is an accurate word. And looking through the list of all the words that are the most frequently searched here, it's interesting. They're all, I mean, obviously all connected to the pandemic, all to coronavirus, all
Wow.
to things that I assume, unless you were in the medical field, you wouldn't use or come across on a daily basis. Things like quarantine, asymptomatic, viruses, pandemics, super spreaders, you know,
I was
these
gonna
types,
say,
this type of vocabulary.
Those are new words, right? Super spreader, for example. To me, that sounds like a new word. Sorry, Leo.
I mean, I remember in the spring when I heard someone say the term social distancing together as a collocation, and I laughed because I'd never heard that combination of words together ever in my life. And now it's ingrained in our brain now, 9-10 months later, that that's so normal. But in March, I had never heard that before.
It's interesting because if I told you last year that I am self-quarantining because I caught COVID-19 during an anti-mask rally that was later reported as a super spreader event, and now I'm furloughed and feeling depressed because I've been doom scrolling for hours, you wouldn't understand what I'm saying, even though I'm using English. Is this the new normal, Mike?
Wow. There you go. Is this the new normal? Yeah, I think it speaks to what you said earlier. Like every year, new things happen and languages grow, languages develop. I just think this year it was, as to go back to what you said, it was exponential, right? Like because we had a new context. And as you and I know, like language is based on context, right? Without context, there's nothing, right? So
Absolutely.
we have these, yeah. So I guess you could say that the pandemic really exacerbated this kind of trend. Sorry, that's an inside joke there, everyone. Yeah. But exacerbate would be another word that just kind of
But
popped up more commonly than it did in the past. Yeah,
a great year to learn vocabulary. I mean, these words are
There you
not.
go.
I guess the question is, what is a new word? Because my inclination here is that these are not new words, but these are just scientific words. They're medical words that were used, or we are and were used in a very tight, small community. You know, epidemiologists or virus researchers and doctors and nurses and the general public. So, you know, the word social is not a new word. The word distancing is not a new word. But using them together as a phrase, as a collocation, has a brand new meaning. So maybe that's the question, is the words are not new, but the meanings are different.
It's interesting because if you compare 2020 to 2019, you would see that the words for 2019 were completely different, which just goes to show that language is a living thing. And if language is a living thing, then 2020, I think it would be fair for us to say that language has had a growth spurt, I guess. We've learned a lot of new words, a lot of new vocab. And I don't know if you guys know this, but apparently the word coronavirus was more frequently used than the word time, which is one of the most frequently used nouns in the English language. What does this say about vocab?
Wow. So it tells me something about priority. That's what it tells me, right? That perhaps words are more frequent when they're prioritized and when words are required to explain what's happening in a situation or in a context, right? It's just funny that time would be an interesting comparison because coronavirus did wreak havoc with our time and it really made us rethink time and place.
Hey,
But yeah, I think for me, Leo, yeah, it reminds me of something to do with priority.
Mm-hmm. Bring this to language learning then. How does this affect language learning? Because Andrew, one of the things you have said recently in the podcast was that these are not new words. These were just words that have recently emerged. They have been brought back into our reality. What does that say about language learning?
that I think we have to keep up with it. Not even for learning a language, but just how we use a language is always evolving, and we're in combinations of words and words that have different meanings. Words are very contextual. They're very social. That they have certain meanings in certain contexts, in certain places, and in places that they're used and how they're used. And so we have to keep questioning ourselves. Oh, I heard Leo say this word here, and I heard Mike say the same word, but in a different way. Does the meaning change? And keep testing myself. And what was a collocation that Mike used? Maybe that the modifier or the noun after or the adjective before changes the meaning of what Leo was saying. And I just looked up. You said Oxford doesn't have a word of the year for 2020, but they did for 2019, of course. And it's actually not a word at all. It's a collocation. Do you know what it was?
I know.
And to go for sorry, no.
What
was it? Sorry. Which one?
2019 word of the year from Oxford was climate emergency.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Climate emergency.
Why? Well, because that goes to show that in 2019 we had a lot of climate related vocab, a lot of climate related terms. And apparently it's interesting, Andrew, because I'm looking at the most common word in 2020 in January was the word bushfire, which goes to show that the climate related term kind of like was brought into the beginning of 2020. What was the key word in February? Does anyone know?
Valentine?
Interesting. Because you said Andrew, Mike said priority, Andrew said relevance, it's social. The word of February was the word impeachment, because that was a very hot topic in January when the trial to impeach Donald Trump began. So that was the most common word in February. What about the end of February, beginning of March? Can anyone guess?
Wow.
It must be something about virus or
Must be
pandemic.
something about virus.
It's a noun related to impeachment, but again, Donald Trump wasn't impeached. So he was
acquitted? Acquittal?
Acquittal was the noun at the end of February. It's interesting how we go from bushfire, which was a defining climatic event at the end of 2019 and beginning of 2020, because there was those Australian bushfire seasons, right? Yeah, apparently it was the worst ever in the history of bushfires in Australia.
And the media would know that's important because of the previous year. This was a massive topic all over the world, right?
So what does that tell us?
Rallies in cities.
About tips for learning and vocabulary development. And is there a connection between that and current events?
To me, Andrew, it says that perhaps staying on top of current events, reading, exposure. Leo and I have talked a lot about this in earlier podcasts when we were looking at the 7 C's. Putting yourself out there and getting exposure to language, even if you're not living in a country where English is spoken, is quite important. And obviously, reading the news, listening to the news, watching it on your favorite social media platform is kind of really, really important here, isn't it?
And to add to what you said, Mike, I would actually argue that if you really want to learn how these words are used, you have to do what we call narrow reading. So perhaps instead of just reading about one article that is related to bushfires, you would read at least 10 different articles from 10 different sources talking about the same topic, because a lot of these words will overlap and it will be used differently depending on the sources. And I think one of the reasons why it's so easy for us to acquire these words, as Andrew said, with socially distancing, is because we hear them all the time. We are reading the news and we're seeing these words being used over and over again in different contexts. So we're doing not only narrow reading, but we're also doing a lot of narrow listening. So a strategy for those people who are if you're trying to learn a language, is try to pick a topic and read about that topic as narrowly as possible by looking at different sources. So I think that would be a very good strategy to acquire vocab.
And just to finish off there, Leo, I think that this should also be reassuring to learners because it shows us that learning is an ongoing process. It's lifelong. These are words, social distancing, these are words that quote unquote native speakers don't know, right? Like it shows that you're never 100% truly perfectly proficient in the language, that you need to stay on top of things, right? So, excuse me. I just think it's reassuring, and it shows learners that there is no kind of perfect ideal, or the native speaker is not something you should be trying to strive for. It should be, as you said earlier, finding words that are relevant to your own life, that help you talk about the things that matter and focus on those, and realizing that new words are going to come up all the time to help you talk about these things.
And it's a real life example of how people learn not only what words mean, which we always say is the first step, but never the last step, but also how to use words and in which context to use them, which is the hardest part about learning new words or combinations of words. All of us sitting here, and probably everybody listening, didn't know words, or how, even if we know what the word lockdown meant, if you asked us to use it in a sentence, it would have been pretty difficult 10 months ago or 1 year ago. PPE, I know I didn't know what that was
Good example.
10 months ago, right? Looking at words like contact tracing or flattening the curve, all of these, I could have guessed their meaning, but if you asked me to use it, I would have failed miserably. But it's on the news every day. It's in the articles every day. You hear your friends using it, seriously or as a joke. And through exposure and through continued use, and now we all sitting here using these words like they're normal words. But how long? It's only taken us 6 months, and we've got hundreds of new words in our vocabulary now. It's a real life example of how people learn vocabulary.
I was thinking about that. First of all, I had a question before I talk about the question I have for you. But which word came before, coronavirus or COVID-19? What do you guys think?
Coronavirus, right?
I want to say it was coronavirus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Coronavirus came early March, and then mid-April, that's when the word COVID-19, which is a completely new word, was first reported by the World Health Organization, which is basically an abbreviation of the coronavirus disease. And then right after that, Andrew, that's when the word lockdown, which is a term that is apparently more preferred in Anglophone countries like United Kingdom, Canada, Australia. But interesting, it's a word that has been borrowed by other languages, because when I was talking to some of my Brazilian friends, some Spanish friends, they were using the word lockdown. So they're pronouncing it.
There you go.
They're adding their own. But you see, that goes to show that even a person who doesn't speak English will still learn words that come from English. And it was only after lockdown that the word social distancing came, because I think it was introduced as a means to reduce the spread.
Communal
My friend
spread,
and I like to joke that's the COVID PR firm at work, making people feel more like advertising on COVID's part, making it seem more attractive and making it seem better. Coronavirus sounds bad. COVID-19 sounds a bit more scientific and not as intimidating. So
yeah.
And I think Corona Beer was not happy that it was called that, probably.
Just gonna say, that's ouch.
So the other question I had for both of you is, prior to the global pandemic, have you ever found yourself, or have you ever noticed yourself using the verb to self-quarantine? Is that a word that you ever used in your whole life?
Never.
No, I don't think so.
No. It just goes to show
never.
that...
I know. Yeah.
Quarantine is not a word that I know that was a word that really stuck out to me. It sounded so severe. It sounded like a medical experiment. It sounded something like, my God, like a sci-fi movie. And I guess in a way,
I was going to say
we've been living in a
like
sci-fi
zombies.
movie. But it's interesting to see how things normalize or become normal over time. Those words are very
even the word
abrasive,
normal,
I guess, right? Serious words as they are. And now, through overuse, they become, or they seem less serious. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I can't fly home to see you because I have to quarantine. Right? Like it's just like it's second nature now. Yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly, late May, that's when the word reopening became frequently
Okay.
used because
Well, that
they
makes
were
sense. Change of
reopening
scenery,
shops.
season.
Yes, yes. And then what was the most common, most searched word in June? Can you
I
guys
want to
guess?
say mask. Is that when mask started to?
No,
Yeah.
no. Let's say
But
it's a
then again,
movement.
searching.
It was a movement. Something
movement.
happened.
Black Lives
George
Matter.
Floyd. Yes.
Oh, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, that's
It
yeah.
just goes to show how language
course.
is a social act, because this word exploded in the beginning of June, and I think it remained until the end of the year with the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, other Black Americans.
Certainly,
right?
As it should be a talking point through the U.S. election, which basically just is kind of still going on. So it's certainly still talked about, obviously, as it should be.
Yes.
Yeah, great point.
What about in July? July, I think, has the two words that I wanted to suggest that are my two words.
Okay,
the
so we're
first
getting
word
to
in
it.
July.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting to our words. In July, it was the word cancel culture, which is actually a collocation, right? Cancel culture. And basically, again, this idea, this culture of boycotting and withdrawing support from celebrities or from public figures, because their actions were considered somewhat socially unacceptable. I remember that people were trying to cancel Joe Rogan. They were trying, I think a lot of people got canceled. Can you think of any other? It's funny because we started canceling people. We never did that in the past. We never canceled a person.
Cancel an event, right? Or something like that.
You cancel an event, you cancel your credit card, but now you cancel people.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
I have studied English on my own and in a classroom for years, but felt like I wasn't improving. I didn't really know how to learn. Then I found the Learn Your English online student membership. My name is Azad, and I am an LYE member. This membership is for people who are passionate about learning English in their own way. These are not classes. This is learning outside of the classroom, replacing textbooks with other students in a safe space. We learn by participating in activities just for us, effective and fun. Head over to the Learn Your English website for all the details. That is learnyourenglish.com. Ready to take control of your learning? Join me today in the Learn Your English student community.
Hey everyone out there, I am Pamela from Costa Rica and you're listening to Teacher Talking Time, the Learn Your English podcast. Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Mi nombre es Pamela y soy de Costa Rica y ustedes están escuchando en este momento Teacher Talking Time del podcast Aprende tu Inglés.
So what I'm hearing here, it's very interesting because even going back to the word of the year last year from Oxford, climate emergency, a lot of words are combinations of words. So maybe, do you think the trick to learning vocabulary then is not to learn one word, but to learn collocations or to learn words that go with that word? Because if you say the word cancel, we know the definition of the word cancel is a pretty simple word, but any number of combinations, words you put before it or after it, would drastically or could drastically change the meaning of the word, right?
Yes.
There are lots of other examples as well, quarantine, etc., etc. But would that be a trick? Before we get to, I know we have our own list of our words of the year, or maybe there are combinations of words, but do you think that's a trick to learning new words?
Absolutely.
I would agree. Yeah. I think that that's something we've talked extensively about, both in our newsletter and also in some other episodes of the podcast. But yeah, how can you learn a word if you don't know how to use it in a sentence? And in order to use it in a sentence, you have to know what comes with it, right?
All right.
I have to admit that I didn't know much about the cancel culture expression. But then eventually when I started looking into articles and reading more, that's when I became a little more familiarized with how to use the word cancel or how to use the expression cancel culture. It was basically this idea of boycotting people. But I never thought that you could actually cancel a person, as I said earlier.
Right.
But
It's
I
a
feel
noun
like
phrase in that case as well. We usually think of cancel as a verb.
Cancel
Yeah.
culture
is
is
interesting.
something, right?
Yeah.
Has
Yeah,
resulted
cancel.
in something. Yeah.
Yeah,
very
but you can
interesting.
also cancel someone. We can say, for example, we're using cancel in a passive voice, saying he's been canceled. That's why he's not on the news anymore.
Right.
Or
And I
just added
think
another
a
word.
lot of people, a lot of celebrities were canceled this year. A lot of people who did things that were considered, as I said, socially unacceptable, they were eventually canceled. And I think, yeah, that's it. That's basically it. But yeah, Andrew, I think you're right. I think we really need to emphasize to those people who listen to this podcast that it's really important to read, listen, narrowly,
Notice. Yeah.
notice,
Notice.
analyze it, and then find ways to use it. So that's perhaps the best way to learn and remember
Perfect.
words that you learn.
All right, Leo, the
Yeah.
suspense is killing us here, man. What's your word of the year? Is it cancel culture or is there another one?
I think cancel culture is one. BIPOC is definitely another one,
Whoa.
Good one.
because I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And-
Where do you BIPOC? Where's that? What does that mean?
Okay, I think that word emerged in late July, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember joining a couple of conversations, live conversations with people in the summer when we had the reopening of
Temporarily.
of businesses, yes,
Yeah.
temporarily. And I remember people having conversations. They're like, "Oh yeah, because BIPOC people, BIPOC." And I was like, "What the hell is BIPOC?" And then eventually, because the usage of this word became so pervasive around the groups of people that I was hanging out with, that eventually I had to Google it. And I found out that BIPOC is an abbreviation. So a lot of abbreviations now in 2020 is an abbreviation for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Andrew? What's a word for you?
So my word of the year. So that's interesting. So your word of the year is an abbreviation. Oxford's word of the year was a collocation last year, and my word of the year is also a collocation. It's not one word, but it's definitely a new term that I don't think anyone has said before the last 10 months, and my word is Zoom fatigue.
Oh.
Zoom
Good one.
fatigue.
Yeah.
Not sponsored, by the way. Although we are using Zoom.
Lots of good collocates there, right? Like to suffer from Zoom
So
fatigue,
exactly. So
right?
then I looked up common words that go with Zoom fatigue, and just fatigue. Again, Zoom is the name of a company, and fatigue is a word that's not a new word, but how we use it has changed and evolved over the last 10 months. So common verbs that go with fatigue is to combat fatigue, to relieve fatigue, to experience fatigue, cause, prevent, feel, and then you can use Zoom fatigue as a collocation with all of those verbs as well. So teaching online and working online and living online, most people probably experience Zoom fatigue or experience severe or maybe mild Zoom fatigue on a day-to-day basis, or suffer from Zoom fatigue. And I know I do, and I know you guys do as well. And even Zoom fatigue, the word Zoom is kind of like Kleenex. Even if you're not using Zoom, you're using whatever program software you're using, most people would still say Zoom fatigue. You might not buy the brand Kleenex, but you probably still call it Kleenex. So Zoom has capitalized on that term as well.
And even as a verb, right? Like let's Zoom, right?
Yeah,
So using it as
great
a verb,
point.
using it as a noun.
I'll Zoom you. Yeah.
I'll Zoom you.
Easy now, Mike. Easy now.
Let's Zoom later.
Zoom. Yeah, I'll Zoom you. Zoom me.
So and I looked up those words and those verbs that are most common with fatigue, and I didn't know those, obviously, off the top of my head. So those are the most common verbs that go with fatigue and Zoom fatigue. So, and then if you're going on the other side, if you want to modify and go past Zoom fatigue on the other side, what are the symptoms or what happens to you if you suffer from Zoom fatigue, where you can have headaches and muscle weakness and dizziness and just overall tiredness, etc. So there's lots of ways to incorporate and use that word. So that's my word of the year.
I think there's a connection between your word and another word that I would perhaps elect as my word of the year. But I'll ask Mike, because I'm curious about his word.
I got a few, but I'm gonna start. Well, listen, it's been a wild year, but I'm gonna start off. You tell me the context of this. Okay, so this is a concept. My word of the year is rabbit hole.
Oh, that's a good one.
So, any idea what the context might have been? Contexts might have been for rabbit hole.
Oof. Well, we know a rabbit hole is
the news.
Place where you search for something and you kind of just go down that hole like what a rabbit digs, and it goes on forever and ever. So maybe, Mike, you were searching for
Wonderland.
Symptoms of COVID-19, maybe?
It's really, Leo?
There is a movie. There is a Nicole Kidman movie called Rabbit Hole. And I think she started cheating on her husband. And I think, well, we all know what happens. She goes down a rabbit hole.
There we go. Yeah, venturing down a rabbit hole.
Actually,
as Andrew said, seeking information. Almost
I'm not going to
endless.
spoil it. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead. Say it again.
The connection to 2020 is conspiracy theories.
Okay.
And some of our listeners might be familiar with QAnon.
Yes.
And during the election, there were a lot of people talking about how certain platforms have provided or serve as a rabbit hole. So basically, as Andrew said, you would dig deeper to find more and more information. Problem is, you never get to the answer. You're kind of thrown down a rabbit hole, or you fall into a rabbit hole, so to speak. And I think a couple things. Yes, it's tied to conspiracy theories, but also I think we've all experienced this, right? Like we find a topic we're interested in, and then 2 hours later, we're still searching the internet, trying to learn more about it, and you kind of fall into the rabbit hole. And I just, from a personal level, just my own studies and just like reading one article, then reading another article, and then finding one, and just endless information. And we live in this information age where there are
it's a perfect word for this year. Perfect. My God.
Well, there is a reference, because I was thinking about that, because I remember they used that word in Matrix, but the Matrix reference comes from the journey of Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, because she starts with us. I think she's looking at a painting. I think it's a painting. Yeah, and as what you said, Mike, it's a very simple search, which is the rabbit hole, and then you kind of like find yourself on the dark side of the web.
Off topic slightly at each different step, and then eventually you're like on a totally new thing, and it's been 2 hours.
YouTube is a good example of that.
Oh, that's a great example. Yeah.
YouTube. You start with one video, and then you watch a suggested video, and then you're like, how the hell did I end up here?
3 hours later.
3 hours later, right? Yeah. Because you keep digging deeper, right? Lots of twists and interesting.
And I think it connects to learning, but there also is a negative side of it. Like if I were talking to Leo, and Leo's in my office back in the day, and we're chatting, I might say, "Oh, Leo, let's check this out." And then 20 minutes later, we've fallen into the rabbit hole, and work's not getting done. So it can be this good thing, this inquiry, but it can also just be a pure waste of time, right? Yeah.
Interesting, Mike, because my other favorite word for 2020 is directly related to yours. And perhaps it's even a synonym, and this is something that we could discuss. When I said earlier, if I told you guys last year that I am self-quarantining because I caught COVID-19 during an anti-mask rally that was later reported as a super spreader event, and now I'm on furlough and feeling depressed because I've been doom scrolling for hours. I think that's the word for me.
Wow,
doom
what's that?
Scrolling. So I didn't know until recently. So I think I want you guys to picture this. One day I was talking to my daughter, and she was trying to get into bed. I turned off the lights, and she tried to fall asleep. Eventually she woke up in the middle of the night, and I saw her on her phone. She was looking on her phone, and she was like basically saying, "Daddy, the coronavirus is killing a lot of people. We don't know if I'm going to go back to school." And she said, "All my friends are." So she started feeling very anxious, and she had a panic attack that night, and I'll never forget that. And eventually I started to do more research into this self-destructive behavior which has become very common for a lot of us. When you eventually start watching the news or you start scrolling through your news feed, and you eventually find out that there's only negative things. So when you keep scrolling through all of your social media feeds, looking for the most recent, I would say, well, and we know this, the most of the news are upsetting. They won't feel any better. So the more you scroll, the worse you're going to feel. So you're doom scrolling. So that was
the further you go
down
down that rabbit hole, right?
That's right. So
feel.
doom
Beautiful.
scrolling and
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah.
I think there is a
They are
connection between
connected.
those two.
Wow.
Yeah. The more you doom scroll, the deeper you go down the rabbit hole.
We've almost created a whole new language
Interesting.
this
A little
year.
grim.
It's interesting.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Now, if I could go next, and then we'll come back to you, Andrew, for your second one, because I know if we push ourselves, we're going to find one. Because Leo, I think my second one actually connects with something you said earlier, and maybe even connect to doom scrolling in the rabbit hole. Echo chamber.
Ooh.
Oh. Okay.
Echo
Would you like to
chamber.
tell us more about how you came across
Well,
that
I
word?
find that we were talking earlier about media and following people on social media and even cancel culture and it's quite interesting that that this pandemic wasn't really a time for people to come together. I think there are great examples where people came together, but it was actually quite a divisive time, right? We had people on both sides with opposing views. And what happened was a lot of people would just listen to the news that agreed with their opinion. It was echoing back what they were
Interesting.
believing. And they did this not only on the channels that they watch, but the people they follow or the newsletters they subscribe to. So they could get this kind of same opinion echoing back at them.
Right.
And they were kind of oblivious to the other side. So
it's a chamber, Mike. So a chamber is because it's a space, right?
It's a metaphorical space, right?
It's a space where everyone agrees with the information, basically. Is that it?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
And if you don't, then you find your own echo chamber, right?
Or you're canceled. Or you cancel one of the other echo chambers. Yeah, you cancel Very
other
interesting.
representative culture, so to speak.
So it's almost like a bubble, right?
Oh, another
You just
great
took my
word.
next word. That was my
another
next one. That was number 2.
Oh,
Go,
sorry.
go,
Yeah.
Andrew.
No,
Go,
it's perfect.
go.
It's a good. We align there. So that was very
There
good.
we go.
We thought bubbles or just quarantine thought bubbles were always a thing, but now if you are doom scrolling and you're going down that rabbit hole and you're only watching news with people that share the same opinion that you do, then they are your intellectual bubble, we can say. Or obviously in the last year we've had to restrict our social interactions or physical distancing with people inside of our quote unquote social bubble, which depending on where you live in the world can be upwards of 0 people to 10 to 20 or whatever the case was on a month or week to week basis. But bubble, again, not a new word obviously, but how it's used this year is drastically different than unprecedented use, we can say.
They're all connected. In a way, they are all connected.
But it's really brilliant, honestly,
doom
because
scrolling. Yeah.
most of the world are not epidemiologists and don't know about this. So these are all words that I hope are easy for us to understand what we need to do to combat the virus, to combat the pandemic, So words like bubble and quarantine and self-quarantine and self-isolate, using the word self as a prefix on those, it hasn't always, but should imply responsibility and accountability for one's own actions. So I think it's an interesting,
absolutely,
whatever board meeting happened about coming up with what words to use to help the population understand what was going on. It was an interesting collection of vocabulary that started to be used across the world.
Yeah, I really like that. Echo chamber, doom scrolling, and now bubbles. Huh. Very,
All
very
right.
interesting.
But these are kind of grim.
A little
No?
bit.
Like I
Yeah.
think it only seems right to end the year on a positive
it.
note. So for my final word,
Oh.
I think for our final words, let's see if we can find something more positive. So my word, and I hope this doesn't steal yours, Leo,
Mm.
leverage.
Uh-huh.
Good one.
During the pandemic, people had to find solutions, right? We were all kind of thrown into new environments, and we had to take the skills and the resources we had, and we had to try and use them to find the solution, right? So I think some people you leveraged their skills to start new careers. I think some people leveraged the time they had to take up new hobbies or to spend time with their family. I think people leveraged their resources, but then used them across lots of different areas. So, for example, you had alcohol companies making hand sanitizer, right? They were leveraging their knowledge, know-how, technology, resources to help the response. So I think for me, if I had to finish, I'd finish on a positive note. But I think leverage is a key word that would be part of that.
Wow, you made me think now hard and
Awesome.
about that.
That's a great word. And that's a positive one. Good way to end the year on that one. That's a great one.
Do you have one, Andrew? Do you have one personal word, maybe a word that could become a lesson? Because leverage is a good word, and I like that word a lot too.
Not really, honestly. No.
I have 3 words. Does that count? Is it like can I use a phrase instead of a
Sure. Of
a
course,
word?
yeah.
I think the word for me, or the phrase, it's not fair.
Oh.
And why did I choose that? Because many times in my life, I always thought, oh, but this is not fair. And my kids sometimes used to say that to me. But I honestly told them that they should really remove these words out of their vocabulary. Why? Because these words are impotent and they are meaningless. Why? Because they don't do anything to us. They don't improve our lives. They don't, as you said, Mike, they don't allow us to leverage our skills. But what do? They make us upset. They make us believe that we don't have options, as you said, because we do. We all have options. We just need to leverage those things.
Almost like it's like they blame. It's like taking something and blaming it rather than controlling what you can control. So to speak, right?
That's right. And I was going to mention one of the biggest lines for me this year was a line by Epictetus when he said that it's not things that really upset us, but our judgments about those things. So when we think about the word fair is not really objective. Fair is an opinion that we have.
Like my fair might be different from your fair. Then.
From your fair, exactly.
Right.
So it's an opinion that we all have about an objective reality that we currently find ourselves in. So to me, it's those 3 words: removing, maybe not really a word of the year, but more like removing these words from my year. It's not fair. Removing that from your vocabulary. What about you, Andrew?
No, I can't top that. That's a really good one. I don't really have, honestly, a personal word that I've come across. I think those. I'll steal those ones. Those are really good options.
Yeah, that's not fair.
You're right, but that's okay.
We should definitely come back next year to talk about the words of 2021.
Sure.
I have one for Andrew as a friend.
Oh yeah,
Journey.
So you're gonna land.
Journey, I think, is a good word for Andrew.
Don't stop believing.
Journey. Yeah. Not only the band, great new singer, by the way. But yeah, I think Andrew, we've been on a journey this year as a company.
You betcha.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we've been on a learning journey, right? There have been bumps along the journey, hurdles to overcome, but we've made it, right?
We've started this podcast, for learners.
It's been a great, I think everyone has the same mentality. The last year seems like it's gone by very fast, but it also feels like it's a whole decade all in one year at the same time. So journey I like that. It is a good one. It has been a long year and for everybody in many respects. But only good things has to be coming ahead next year, as there is light at the end of the tunnel, of course, and vaccines are coming and are here and are in many places of the world. And I think quarantine, we've gotten accustomed and we've gotten used to it, but I know we all can't wait to break the bubble and get out of it and replace our Zoom fatigue with classroom fatigue once again.
Or no fatigue.
Or no fatigue.
Yeah, let's just. Why can't we just enjoy stuff? Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, so those are the words of the year.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone. Right? Thanks for listening to the Cult of Learning. This is our first year producing this podcast. And before we go, show us some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a review on Spotify. You can subscribe to our channels. And stay tuned because next year we have new episodes of the Cult of Learning. Mike, Andrew, Happy New Year. Happy 2021.
Happy New Year as well.
Likewise.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
You've been listening to Teacher Talking Time, brought to you by Learn Your English. Ready to take control of your education? You're in the right place. Teaching, professional development, learning. Expand your world with Learn Your English.